We got kind of tired of doing musicians because they're all bards and they're all sorceresses and everything else, and that's kind of boring. So we decided to go historical, and we're going to do Fredrich Neitzsche.
Oh, Nietzsche, my boy.
So for those who aren't over 40, Nietzsche was a dude way back in the day who valiantly declared God is dead, kind of like proto-socialism, and believes that man can do pretty much anything the fuck he wants to.
Proto-socialism was incorrect, first of all. That's not really true. His belief that God is dead was not really... He
not
wasn't
in the
atheist,
literal
but,
sense. It's not in the literal sense.
He was more talking about how the nature of like culture had changed, is that we no longer were simple beings that needed to be enticed by the stars. He thought he was a humanist.
Yeah,
he believed that humans could do whatever they wanted, and they no longer really needed that. He accepted the realization that belief was necessary for some people, but he
was more empirical, basically. Like what you see is what you get.
He was part of kind of the absurdist movement, where he thought things were ridiculous and silly, and so man deserved to be good because you should, not because God told you to.
I would love to see him and Mark Twain have a conversation. I bet that would be really fucking interesting.
Potentially. The only thing I don't think they would get along is I think, wasn't Twain, didn't he like party with the early American writers?
Dude, he partied.
Wasn't he like a wily folk?
Dude, he partied
because Friedrich Nietzsche. The only thing that I don't follow of his is that he didn't drink. He thought alcohol was the worst. He thought anything that made you dumb was the worst. Like he only drank water. He drank milk as like a dessert because he was weird.
Nerd.
That's the only
lactose intolerance.
Fucking nerd. All right, so we have Fredrich Neitzsche on our character sheets. It is blank. So let's start off with his alignment, because I don't think I could really place his. He's not necessarily neutral. I think
it'd be chaotic neutral.
Chaotic neutral. That sounds about right.
I think he actually no. I'm sorry. I think it's lawful neutral. Because he was a very strict and attentive man. That he did exactly what he believed, and he never went outside the lines. When I say chaotic, I mean it's chaotic, but neutral because like he didn't believe in good or bad at all. He just wanted people to be the best that they possibly could.
So he was more,
but I think lawful.
He was more objective then. He was kind of like an objectivist than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. He did believe in like an umbrella sort of look over humanity. That we were capable of things and we needed to be our best. I'd also put him as a druid. As like a non-religious magician of sorts who, because he didn't necessarily like people and people didn't like him. He also one time had like a fit because he saw a horse being beaten and he like lost his mind and almost went to jail because he ran over and was like, I understand you.
Well, okay. So here's what I could probably say about Nietzsche. His charisma is like a 2. Like his charisma is an absolute train wreck.
For sure.
His constitution's probably dope as fuck. His wisdom and intelligence is probably a little above average. Strength, he looked like a big burly guy. You know what?
He was a philosopher. Maybe
he's a dwarf.
I could see him being a dwarf.
He could be a dwarf.
Yeah. I can see that.
He got a nice. There's the facial hair from the picture.
Strong stash.
That stash was very, very luscious.
Honestly, I could just see him, like, if he was behind me, I would just hear, and my axe, like, I could just hear it coming out of his
sure.
And my
so the reason I say druid, one thing, is more because, like, so he is, he was a leader. Like, he did, like, go out. He wanted to change things. Like, he grew up in a weird way, and he really wanted to, like, improve people. But like not in the religious sect. So like I think he has this sort of like magical ability, and like I think he's wise beyond his years. Like he understood humanity beyond anything.
But, he understands, but I don't think he actually gave a fuck about changing people. It was more along the lines of, this is what I think, you can take it or leave it. I don't give a fuck what you do. Like, and I don't know if that's necessarily druid-esque. I feel like
literally everything he wrote was trying to benefit humanity. He specifically wrote as a humanist, like trying aggressively to make people better. Every single thing he wrote was aggressively trying to make the world a better place. And some of it, he did some fucked up things. He didn't necessarily know what was going on because he was a victim of the times. Like he's still like a fucking German dude from like what, the 1800s.
Well, I'm trying to think of classes for like fucking nerds, but like angry nerds, like a battle mage. He could be a decent battle mage.
I could say wizard could work because they're also like they're studious magicians. They're not religious magicians.
Yeah.
Well, like I said,
and they don't make a pact like warlocks with any demon. So like he's not making a pact with any type of god. He just studies everything. Like
he definitely like everything he did himself for sure. He did amazing in school. He's a very renowned student.
Yeah.
From like an old rich family. So I guess that wizard
and then wizards still get their powers from the elements. So it's still in tune with nature as well.
Yeah. But they have to like learn. Like wizards
you have to literally learn. And so he was like with his theological studies, he gave up on God like a little bit in. So after studying, he's like, no, fuck this. I want to learn other stuff.
Would you say that there's maybe a twinge of cross-class into alchemy maybe?
He could be an alchemist.
Alchemy kind of fits in that same genre. Like the alchemist kind of class originally was more of like a subclass of wizards. So it does fit in that same thing.
It's a lot more reclusive with his.
Yeah, because like now there's like artificers that are like proto wizards that now you can be an alchemist. And I got the book today. There's a brand new book that just came out today that officially made artificers real. But I do see that but he didn't like dabble in like potions though. But I do think he was.
Well, he's got really good oratory skills, and like I'm trying to find a.
What if he's a professor at one of the wizard universities? How about that? He could be an NPC.
That's a cool backstory.
That I like. Again, I would use him as like a sagely figure in a campaign for sure, but one that might like start a revolution. Maybe he takes on like the clerical.
He's a disgraced former professor at a wizard university for speaking out against.
I like that.
He's Gandalf the crotchety. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I think he'd more go like a Saruman. Like I can see him being a Saruman for sure. Yeah. And he raises up his own armies to like in his weird like fucked up code of ethics that he believes in.
Okay.
Trying to, like, take over the world.
I'm gonna change his alignment, and I'll tell you why. He's not chaotic neutral. I would say he was lawful evil for his time, because back in the day he was, as far as anyone was considered, speaking fucking blasphemy, and so nowadays maybe chaotic neutral, but in his time frame,
lawful neutral.
Or lawful neutral, yeah. In his time, he would be strapped lawful evil. Like, this is the lay of the land. I know that you hate it, but this is what it is.
He was speaking out against the people for sure. Like he was a new voice in his world. And often, of course, people think everything that they don't understand is evil because people are the worst.
Exactly.
So, like, subjectively, in a relevant time period, yes, like he would have been seen as evil for sure.
Which now fits the more Sauron mode. The Sauron.
Yeah, like I can totally like he would definitely be that. He would be the Saruman in the campaign I ran for sure. And potentially being the big bad, like he could be my BBG, but he would be like. He'd be a compelling bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
He would be like a
because he's not truly bad.
Well, he's a scholar thug is what he is, and and they're the best kind because they're not written well by any means. Like there's only a few scholar thugs that I can really think of on one hand, like Scorpius from Farscape or Kingpin from the original Daredevil. I think he was great. I look at these kind of like, dangerous with words, not necessarily with deed. And I love that. I love that so much.
That is true. His, cause he did do some weird things. There's like some weird things going on, like him and his sister had like a weird relationship.
Okay.
He did some creepy shit.
What in the Midwest?
What in the Midwest?
Oh, he was like notoriously bad with women. It's like a weird part of history that they put in like every book about Nietzsche is like ladies didn't like him. Well, probably because he was like, drink water and be better.
And God is dead and you're still into the Christians.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me a little bit of like Napoleon and the way he was able to speak to people, where like, it's like, yeah, he's evil, but he also makes a really good point. Here's the thing. One of the really cool things he did, like Napoleon gets off the island of Malta and he's about to go hang out with King George and cut his head off or whatever be the case, and get his kingdom back. And King George sent a bunch of assholes to like stop him. And instead of him just like fighting these dudes, he's like, you wouldn't kill your emperor now, would you? And they're like, nah. And they actually joined him to go fight King George. And I'm like, if you, that's like, he rolled a natural 20 on that shit.
Charisma check right there. Persuasion.
I fucking love it. That's good. And I think we've got a cool role for him now.
So I mean, and here's the thing, even though he's like, I guess lawful evil, I don't see him as BBEG though either. Like he's more like a Jarlaxle character. Like we know he's evil, but he's not trying to necessarily kill you. He's just trying to take advantage of whatever. He seems more like an opportunist than a guy who just wants to fuck everything up, if that makes any sense.
I disagree. I think he would be, I think he is like if he had nothing else, he had like passion for what he believed in. Like he was a very passionate and emboldened man by his beliefs.
Darth Neitzsche.
Some of which were ridiculous and some of which were over the top. However, like he pushed forward. And so like in this campaign, in my Saruman-esque understanding of him that we've created, like what I would imagine is that like in this world of gods and magic where like he suddenly is this person who's just like, we've grown past this. Like why are like our things are growing, things are better. Like why are you still enslaving each other for beings that don't give a shit about you? Why are you sacrificing 100 bulls for these things? He's like, you can do all these things. We have our own magic. We can make it. We can be better. We can be the best we can because we should be the best we can. How dare thee? How dare the gods? Be gone with these thoughts.
Okay.
So what faction would he be in, though?
What do you mean?
What faction? Which one of the D&D 5e factions?
Like
Lord's Alliance, Santarum, that stuff.
He was dirt fucking poor. He would just be a really angry peasant who rised up through the ranks, I think.
Mm-hmm. Would he create his own damn faction because all the rest are broken?
He would probably create his own damn faction.
Mm-hmm.
I think he'd do his own thing because like I like what you said. Like I think he would have because it wasn't how poor he was, but he went from came from a wealthy family and then he went to university and did incredibly well. But he didn't need things. Like that was one thing, like much of like the absurdist movement, like he didn't care about material possessions. Like that wasn't his jam. He just, once he was done with school, he was like, I'm going to fucking write books and talk shit. And that's what he did. He did it well.
So I know that Nietzsche is your specialty and we can go all night, but I'm going to say final thoughts.
I'm trying not to sneeze.
Well,
do it.
Okay.
Do it.
To describe
Nietzsche.
Do it.
So my final thoughts on Nietzsche, I think he would make an absolute badass, unique character in the D&D realm, especially, if you were to go to the dark side of Nietzsche, which he's already naturally on the dark side, but the dark side of Nietzsche, I think that you would find some really kind of crazy situations with that.
I suddenly had this scene of like a party of characters stumbling upon him and his like, he's built himself up in his own stronghold and you finally get to meet the guy. And then you see this person who's come like begging for forgiveness. And then he's like, well, you clearly didn't think logically. And then has his like right-hand man just like whoosh, behead this dude. And then he's like, oh, hello there, travelers, your party. And you're like, what the hell just happened? Oh my God, is this guy evil? What was that we just walked in on? Yeah.
Sure. I'm much on that line of thought to where like I see him as like someone who had great intentions and then ends up accidentally kind of like creating this cult of like a zealous movement, like this anti-religious movement, that like in this world that he ends up taking over like a tremendous amount of power. And like I would use him as like a more relatable bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Final thoughts all the way through. We good?
Sure.
All right, cool.